In this fortnight's episode, government is at it again, creating inefficiency with the swipe of a pen. What's in the news with stories on cannabis, government theft, Edward Snowden vindicated again, and zero tolerance equals zero intelligence, and a Statists Gonna State segment on yet another Libertarian Party candidate.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. Coming to you from the state where Tupperware was invented in 1938 by Earl Tupper, this is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Revolution needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at the Lava Flow Pod. This is episode 37, the Unintended Consequences Edition, and it's Tuesday, May 24th, 2016. When we've already had more than 398 people killed by police this year. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. The government is at it yet again, sticking their nose in other people's business with the intention of making things better for people. As we've seen over and over again, their meddling will, of course, have the opposite effect. The Obama administration has now unilaterally unveiled a new rule that will all of a sudden make millions of salaried workers eligible for overtime pay that were not eligible before. The regulations, which were last updated more than a decade ago, would let full-time salaried employees earn overtime if they make up to $47,476 a year, more than double the current threshold of $23,660 a year. The Labor Department estimates that the rule would boost the pay of 4.2 million additional workers. This is all scheduled to take effect on December 1st of this year. While I have no doubt that Obama is doing this because he thinks that it will help people, as always, these sorts of meddlesome regulations never do what is intended. The shift was swiftly criticized by small business owners, nonprofit groups, and universities that say they may have to switch some salaried workers to hourly positions to afford the new threshold. And instead of seeing bigger paychecks, some salaried workers may be assigned fewer hours, they said. Quote, "For many of these types of employees, they're going to be viewing it as a demotion," said David French, Senior Vice President of Government Relations for the National Retail Foundation. Quote, "They're going to have to clock in and clock out. They're no longer going to have flexibility at work," end quote. And, of course, businesses will have to find a way around this because labor is already expensive. And labor is usually the highest cost of the majority of businesses. Just like the $15 minimum wage laws, most businesses won't be able to turn a profit if labor costs skyrocket due to these sorts of regulations. And this is not just speculation. As Reason points out, a new study for the Mercatus Center finds that, quote, "There is neither theoretical nor empirical support that the proposed regulation will meet its stated objectives. In fact, evidence suggests that moonlighting may increase in response to these regulations," end quote. The study looks at the various objectives that the government expects the regulations to create: higher pay, higher employment levels, better health, etc., and finds each of them wanting in light of empirical research. Here's part of the take on how overtime regulations work to increase moonlighting. Economist Jane Friesen finds that in Canada, a reduction in standard hours has promoted work sharing, but that the effect is meaningless because it actually led to moonlighting, workers having to take a part-time second job. Specifically, Friesen finds that, quote, "An increase in the predicted probability that a covered worker moonlights of 1.1 percentage points when standard hours are decreased from 44 hours to 40 hours, and by 3.2 percentage points when standard hours are decreased from 48 hours to 40 hours. Friesen concludes, quote, "To the extent that overtime pay regulation is successful at spreading work over a larger number of jobs, it is less successful at spreading it over a larger number of workers. These results are less supportive than previous research of the notion that overtime pay regulation might be an effective means of creating employment opportunities for a larger number of workers. So basically what this study finds is that people will be required to put in less hours, no more than 40 hours per week, to keep from going into overtime wages. This is because overtime is very expensive for companies. This will require many people to take part-time second jobs to compensate for the lost wages from their primary job. And let's not forget the employer, who will either have to find ways of spreading the work that is not completed among other staff or potentially hiring part-time staff to do the extra work. This is completely inefficient. Let's look at it this way. Let's say you're a middle-wage earning medical assistant and you make $35,000 a year, putting you under the $47,000 per year cap for this regulation. You're making just under $17 per hour at a 40-hour level. After these regulations, you will likely be reduced from a salaried employee to an hourly employee making less than the $17 per hour you were making, say $15 per hour, to compensate for the lost productivity, since you can't get as much work accomplished in 40 hours as you could when you were working, say, 45. This means an instant decrease in your salary of right at $4,000 per year, which will need to come from somewhere. Let's say that this reduction happened to you at Hospital A. So, since you have skills as a medical assistant, you get a part-time job at another hospital or practice to compensate for that extra time. Part-time staff make less than full-time staff because of added costs with having to keep up with more paperwork, benefits, and regulations on additional staff. So let's say you're making $12 per hour at the part-time job. This means you will have to work nearly 7 more hours per week to make the same amount of money, not to consider the costs associated with driving to a second job, possibly having to stop somewhere to change uniforms and freshen up, which will add even more inefficiency. Let's say that this part-time job is at Hospital B. Now, let's imagine the place that you're getting the part-time job, Hospital B, is only offering this job because of the same regulation as well, which they've had to cut hours for their salaried staff and move them to hourly. And let's imagine that the person who was originally doing the work that you're now having to cover for also needs more hours to make the same amount that she made before her hours were cut. So now she has to find a part-time job as well. So the full-time person from Hospital B now searches for a part-time job, and as luck would have it, there's a part-time job available at Hospital A because of these regulations that cause the full-time worker from Hospital A to have to go get part-time work at Hospital B. So this employee gets that part-time job at Hospital A for less money and losing several hours a week, just like the other employee. So now we have one employee who used to work salaried, but who now has to work full-time at Hospital A and part-time at Hospital B. And we have another employee who also used to work salaried, but now has to work full-time hourly at Hospital B and part-time at Hospital A to make ends meet. And we haven't even talked about the other benefits that salaried employees often enjoy, such as more flexible hours, bonuses, more flexible time off to take a kid to the doctor or to go to the dentist, etc. Most of these benefits are likely going to disappear for these employees because now every minute counts and will be kept up by a time clock. This is exactly what I mean by unintended consequences. This is inefficiency built in by the government. If government would just keep their grubby fucking hands out of people's businesses, both hospitals would be much more efficient, as would the two employees. Costs and inefficiency have now risen for both the hospitals, and free time and efficiency has been reduced for the employees. Lose-lose. Thank you to our benevolent government. And before you think that this completely hypothetical issue is only hypothetical and would never happen in real life, keep in mind that many years ago I knew two people who essentially did this exact same thing, but on lower-end jobs. One was a stockman at Walmart, the other was a dishwasher at Bonanza. Since both companies were very cost-conscious and full-time labor is much more costly, again, thanks to the government, these two guys could not work full-time at either job, so they both worked part-time doing the exact same job at both companies. There were many, many times that they essentially met each other in the middle between the two jobs to complete the jobs at the other company. Imagine a world where government wasn't dictating such things to companies, and Joe could have worked full-time at Walmart, and Kurt could have worked full-time at Bonanza for the same costs and not have to keep going back and forth. In other words, now, imagine a world without government entirely. Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In cannabis news, doctors should use medical marijuana instead of frequently abused opioids to treat patients with neuropathic pain and a host of other conditions cannabis has been proven to combat. Vancouver-based HIV/AIDS researchers argue in a newly publicized editorial. Dr. Thomas Kerr, co-director of the Center's Urban Health Research Initiative, said 5 recent randomized controlled trials and 2 systematic reviews have found that marijuana helps relieve neuropathic pain. Quote, the evidence supporting the therapeutic use of cannabis is actually much stronger than the use of other drugs that are used to treat the same conditions. And it also seems in many cases that cannabis has a more favorable side effect profile, Dr. Kerr said. He said opioids such as oxycodone, hydromorphone, and morphine are increasingly being prescribed and have contributed to nearly half of all overdose deaths in Canada. Quote, opioids are killing people right now, said Dr. Kerr, whose previous research helped prove the efficacy of Vancouver's controversial supervised injection sites known as Insight. Quote, there is no association with cannabis and mortality, and yet North America is in the midst of really what is a public health emergency associated to opioid overdose deaths, end quote. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I'm no scientist. But there is increasing evidence all the time that cannabis can help with some conditions such as chronic pain. And at a time when opioids are a serious health issue, yet they're prescribed like candy by doctors these days, maybe we should give more encouragement to our doctors to prescribe cannabis instead of opioids. In legalized theft news, the state of Arkansas has stolen $20,000 from Guillermo Espinoza, a construction worker with no criminal record. The money was to be used to buy a 4x4 vehicle in Memphis, which is why Espinoza was traveling with the money in the first place. He was pulled over by Arkansas State Police Sergeant Dennis Overton, and after a drug dog did not hit on the car, Espinoza supposedly gave his permission to search the car, which seems a bit odd to me. Why bother bringing in a drug dog to justify searching a car if the driver is willing to give his consent? In any case, Williams said, quote, the dog alerted on a computer bag, end quote, inside which Overton found almost $20,000 in cash, mostly wrapped in $1,000 bundles. Overton found no contraband, no drug paraphernalia, or any other signs of illegal activity. But as far as he was concerned, the cash itself was conclusive evidence that Espinoza was involved in drug trafficking. And I'm sure him having the last name of Espinoza had nothing to do with that. Right. Quote, I've worked this interstate for the last 8 years, Overton told Espinoza, according to the transcript of the dashcam video, which William appended to his order. Half of my career I've spent out here. Okay, nobody carries their money like that but one person, okay? People that deal with drugs and deliver drugs. That's it. Nobody else. Nobody, end quote. Except people who want to buy a fucking vehicle, maybe? I've carried large amounts of cash to purchase several things, including vehicles and guns in the past. Espinoza, who, like I said, had no criminal record and was never charged in this case for anything, said the money came from years of construction work, and he later presented checks, receipts, and tax forms to substantiate that income. Now, this case was so shady that even the deputy prosecuting attorney didn't want to touch it, saying the case should be dismissed without prejudice. This didn't stop the judge, who went along with the forfeiture anyway. On appeal, Espinoza argued that Williams abused his discretion by refusing to let prosecutors drop the case, that the state had not met its burden of proof, and that the traffic stop was illegally extended to facilitate the canine inspection and search. The state appeals court declined to consider any of those issues because Espinoza missed the 30-day deadline for challenging Williams' decision and the 10-day deadline for extending the 30-day deadline. So basically, on a technicality, the state has decided it is keeping the money it stole from Espinoza. I really hope Espinoza takes his appeal even further, but at some point he will surely spend more than the $20,000 to get the money back. In Snowden was right after all news, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit ruled that the National Security Agency's metadata collection program is unlawful. This is the most serious blow to date for the legacy of the USA Patriot Act and the surveillance overreach that followed 9/11. The central question depended on the meaning of the word relevant. Was the government's collection relevant to an investigation when it collects all the metadata for any phone call made to or from anywhere in the U.S.? The court said no, and that was the right decision. Not so much because it protects privacy, but because it broke the bad precedent of secret law created by the NSA and endorsed by the secret national security court known as the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. The Ninth and D.C. circuits have similar cases before them right now. Here's hoping that they rule the exact same way and that the Supreme Court can then stay out of this case. The legal story may or may not be over, but it certainly should be. In everyone saw this coming news, Wendy's has announced it plans to install self-service ordering kiosks at its restaurants because of growing labor costs associated with rising minimum wages. The third largest fast food company says that it will start installing the kiosks this year. They will be in company-owned outlets, but individual franchises will be able to decide on their own whether or not to invest in the kiosks. Other companies are warning that they are also looking at labor-saving machinery to replace workers due to these rising costs. White Castle says that they might turn to robots instead of workers. McDonald's has also tested ordering kiosks at their Manhattan location. Wendy's is also planning to deploy other technology, such as mobile ordering and mobile payment technology by the end of the year. Taco Bell already has this, and it is fucking awesome. We use their mobile app fairly often, and it is super easy. Free market solutions to government-induced inefficiencies and costs for the win. In Zero Tolerance Equals Zero Intelligence news, a 5-year-old Brighton, Colorado girl has been suspended for a day after bringing a clear plastic bubble gun onto school grounds. A bubble gun. It shoots bubbles, people. Before school started, the kindergarten student took out the bubble gun in the hallway during indoor recess. The school district released a statement saying, quote, "This suspension is consistent with our policy as well as how Southeast has handled similar situations throughout this school year." Seriously? They are trying to defend this moronic action? Unfucking believable. Quote, "We are given a brain, and we should use it," said Tom Mauser, a spokesman for Colorado Ceasefire, whose son died in the Columbine, Colorado shootings. Colorado Ceasefire advocates for stricter gun control laws, and Mauser initially supported zero-tolerance policies. Quote, "But the more stories I heard like this, the more I became against zero-tolerance policies," said Mauser, who now thinks schools must find the difficult balance between public safety and common sense. Look, if an anti-gunner can figure out the absolute ignorance of a policy like zero tolerance, then surely anybody can. This is yet another reason that Jess and I decided to homeschool our children. My oldest, thank anarchy, doesn't pay much attention to authority and would surely be in the principal's office very often. I could totally see him getting suspended over and over for taking a Lego gun to school or some other asinine reason. And before you call me a lunatic, this has actually happened several times in this country. Stories about kids being suspended for Lego guns have come from Massachusetts and New York. But before you write it off as just liberal logic, a kid in Virginia was suspended for making a finger gun and pointing it at his friend. And a 6-year-old in South Carolina was expelled for bringing a clear plastic gun to school and threatened in a letter to her parents with being subject to criminal trespassing if she returned. A 6-year-old child. This is insanity, everyone. Insanity. Get your kids out of these hellholes. And in some U.S. Senate news, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton honestly said that the U.S., which has the highest per capita incarceration rate in the world, is actually suffering from an under-incarceration problem. I shit you not. Now, I've talked about this asshat a couple of times in the past on this show, but he never ceases to amaze me. Quote, take a look at the facts. First, the claim that too many criminals are being jailed, that there is over-incarceration, ignores an unfortunate fact. For the vast majority of crimes, a perpetrator is never identified or arrested, let alone prosecuted, convicted, and jailed, Cotton said during a speech at the Hudson Institute, according to his prepared remarks. Quote, law enforcement is able to arrest or identify a likely perpetrator for only 19% of property crimes and 47% of violent crimes. If anything, we have an under-incarceration problem. Of course these crimes aren't being solved because we're spending all of our time and energy fighting a drug war that's never going to end and is only putting people in prison for not hurting other people. I wonder what would happen if that time, energy, and money was actually spent solving crimes that harm other people. What an idea. Expanding upon his remarks during a question and answer session, Cotton said releasing felons under reduced sentences serves only to destabilize the communities in which they're released. Quote, I saw this in Baghdad. We've seen it again in Afghanistan, recalled Cotton, who served in the Army during both wars. Quote, security has to come first, whether you're in a war zone or whether you're in the United States of America. So in essence, Cotton thinks that we live in a war zone. And guess what? He's right. We live in a time where our privacy and our liberty are second to our security, where we have a vibrant police state in this country, where the gang in blue can get away with just about anything, including stealing $20,000 from a man for nothing, just like the mafia. We live in a country where you can go to jail for life for selling a plant that will grow naturally anywhere that you drop a fucking seed. Yes, Tom Cotton, you're right. We live in a war zone, and it's people like you, Tom, that are the reason. In some Free State Project news, the Free Coast Festival has finally locked down our keynote speaker for the 3-hour cruise. Libertarian YouTube political commentator Julie Borowski will be our keynote speaker, and we are very excited to have her aboard. She's also a former policy analyst for FreedomWorks, and really, you should check out her videos. She puts out some really, really funny stuff. For more information on the event and to buy tickets, go to freecoast.org/festival. In Libertarian Party news, the National Libertarian Party Convention is coming up this weekend. I've already given you my thoughts on the LP presidential race, and I've endorsed Darrell W. Perry for that position. However, there are several other races that will be voted on during the convention, and I wanted to stick my big fat nose in those as well. There are several capable and great libertarians running for the vice presidential nomination this year. My nomination for that race goes to Will Coley. In my opinion, he is the most libertarian of the candidates for sure, and he has worked hard to spread libertarianism to a very unique market, the Muslim community. I would also not be sad to see Judd Weiss get the nomination. Frankly, I would rather have anybody who's running other than William Weld win this nomination, which we'll get to William Weld in a few minutes. There are also a few folks running for the chairman of the Libertarian National Committee. I consider two of those running to be friends and fantastic individuals, and a third one a pretty good guy. This was a tough choice for me because I consider Brett Pajonas to be a very, very close personal friend, but I have to select Nick Sarwark to get my endorsement. You know, I had to tell Brett about this endorsement by phone, and he was pretty upset, and I'm sorry for that, but I believe that Nick has done an incredible job as the current chair. He keeps the meetings of the LNC in line. He has worked to modernize the party as best as he can, and his communication to the party and to press and the outside world have been just incredible. There is no reason at this time to change that position, especially in the middle of the presidential election season. Nick is planning to complete a much-needed revamp of the LP website in the next 2 years, which is very important. Nick has been on the show before, and you can hear that interview at thelavaflow.com/10. I hope you give him a look. For LNC regional and at-large reps, I have a few endorsements, actually. I'm going to endorse my good friend Brett Bittner, the former elected Libertarian out of Georgia. He was also the former executive director of the Libertarian Party of Georgia, and he's the current executive director for the Advocates for Self-Government. Brett has also been on the show back in episode 15, and you can listen to that show at thelavaflow.com/15. Also for the LNC, I endorse Karen Ann Harlos, one of the hardest working libertarians I've ever seen. She busts her ass working for the Libertarian Party Radical Caucus, of which I'm a member. She's also the communications director of the Libertarian Party of Colorado, and she's on the social media team for the National LP. She's also an editor at Independent Political Report. And she honestly spends a lot of her free time reading through old minutes of previous LP conventions. Talk about dedication. She apparently never sleeps. And finally, for LNC, I also endorse my good friend and former state chair of Mississippi while I was the state chair of contiguous Arkansas, Danny Bedwell. This guy is a hardcore libertarian, and he works his ass off for liberty as well as anybody else, and he deserves your support. He's a hell of a guy. Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
Statists Gonna State.
You know, I was honestly hoping to be done talking about Libertarian Party candidates for a while. I was also hoping that I would never, ever again have to talk about another LP candidate in this segment, but I was wrong. The last LP candidate that I talked about in this Statists Gonna State segment has pulled a boneheaded move and endorsed another statist as the LP vice presidential candidate. And that's what brings us here today. Johnson last week endorsed William Weld, Justice Department official and two-term Republican governor of Massachusetts. This guy is not a libertarian, just like Johnson. Weld is even still endorsing and supporting Republican candidates this year. At least Johnson, to most people, is a former Republican, although I see it a bit differently. So what makes Weld a statist? The list is long, just like for Johnson. First of all, as governor of Massachusetts, Weld proposed what the New York Times called, quote, some of the most stringent gun control laws in the country. Weld called for a statewide ban on assault weapons, as well as a waiting period for buying handguns and a prohibition on handgun ownership by anybody under 21. His proposed legislation would also have limited the number of handguns an individual could buy and would impose tough penalties for illegal gun sales and gun-related crimes. He was also a supporter of the Brady Bill from its inception. This guy is not friendly to our right to protect ourselves. But you might say this was years ago. Surely he's changed his mind since then, right? Wrong. Here is a bit of a transcript of him this weekend on CNN's State of the Union. CNN says, quote, let's talk about guns. Back in 1993, you proposed some of the strictest gun control laws in the country, including a statewide ban on some forms of semi-automatic rifles, a waiting period to buy handguns, a prohibition against gun ownership for anyone under 21. Do your positions on strict gun control fit in with a Libertarian Party platform that opposes gun control? Bill Weld responded, quote, well, I'm a lifelong hunter and gun owner, and I don't think these proposals were out of the mainstream at all. I distinguish between, hunting guns and guns that really don't seem to have any hunting purpose or potential purpose. So that was the distinction I was drawing there. But that's an area where I think Gary and I can find common ground. I'm not worried about that issue. Unfucking believable. He gets a chance to give a libertarian answer, and instead he doubles down on supporting gun control. And what's worse is that he knows full well that Gary Johnson and he have common ground on this issue. Someone, please, who is going to be in Orlando, please grab Weld and tell him the Second Amendment is not about hunting. Unless, of course, you're talking about hunting corrupt politicians. And this is the danger of nominating candidates to win instead of nominating candidates based on principle. If Weld wins this nomination, he will be out there on national news talking about gun control and saying that it is sensible, and he will be doing that under the Libertarian Party name. This is why it is dangerous. Please, if you're going to Orlando, please be very, very careful who you nominate. We cannot have more people like this running on the Libertarian Party ticket. Weld has also supported expansive environmental regulations, forcing companies to spend millions of dollars to become more environmentally friendly. While I'm not opposed to the idea of being environmentally friendly, I am certainly opposed to the force involved in these regulations that generally have little to do with the environment and more to do with crushing the free market, as has been said by environmentalists for years. We've talked about this before on the show, and you can hear the quotes from environmentalists saying this themselves on the It's Getting Hot in Here edition of the Lava Flow podcast at thelavaflow.com/34. Weld has apparently also supported affirmative action, which is completely racist and collectivist instead of looking at people as individuals. More disturbingly, though, he was a drug warrior under the Reagan administration and once bragged about prosecuting, quote, drug thugs while serving in the Justice Department. Based on some reports, it seems that he may have backed off on his support for the war on drugs, but that's still hard to tell. And Weld actually endorsed Obama for president in 2008. I'm sorry, call me a purist, call me small tent. I don't give a fuck. There is no way a libertarian can endorse Obama. Ever. The final straw for me anyway is that Weld supported the use of eminent domain to steal privately owned land for the crucial government need of a new basketball arena for the New York Nets. There's a great 2011 documentary called Battle for Brooklyn that tells the story of the Atlantic Yards land grab largely through the eyes of property owner Daniel Goldstein, who spent 7 years trying and failing to save his home from state-sanctioned bulldozers. It's a must-watch. Now, I think endorsing Weld is a move by Johnson showing that he thinks he already has the LP nomination locked up. This is more a move for the general and will gain him no favors among LP delegates. And I think that this will actually hurt him next weekend at the convention, and I can only hope that that's the case. I was concerned that he would win the nomination on the first ballot. Now I'm not so sure. Most Libertarian Party people I've talked to see this as a slap in the face, as they should. Look, the Libertarian Party has a Republican problem, and it's not the one you might think, where Republicans sue us and keep us off the ballot and other bullshit. The LP's Republican problem is one of its own making. And it is because we're nominating Republicans to LP races over and over. It happened in 2008 with Bob Barr, and again in 2012 with Johnson. Do we really want Republicans in the top 2 places on the ticket in 2016? I certainly don't. Can you look me in the eye and tell me that if the Libertarian Party nominates a man who proposed some of the most stringent gun control laws in the country, supported eminent domain, endorsed Obama, and bragged about busting people for victimless crimes, that the LP is in any way still libertarian? If we nominate a Johnson-Weld ticket, what makes the LP different from the GOP anymore? Nothing. I'll tell you what used to make the LP different. It was principle. Unfortunately, principle is something that the LP has been lacking for several years. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite drinking game participant, Jessica, for her help with this show. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on this show, go to thelavaflow.com/37. I have 5 new iTunes reviews this week. The first is from Jonathan Portman. Essential listening. This podcast offers a clear point of view from the libertarian point of view. Essential listening regardless of your own personal politics. Challenge yourself. Jonathan, thank you so much for that review. I'm so glad you enjoy the show. And from Pinecone Percy. Best libertarian podcast. Excellent podcast. The information is relevant and presented in a professional format. Among my political and non-political podcasts, this is the one that I can't do without. Thanks, Roger. Please keep them coming. Wow, Percy, thank you so much. That's a huge endorsement. Can't do without it? Whoa, thanks. And from, and I'm going to butcher this word, Gakdibsdenis, I don't know. And he has to say the following. Tremendous. Though I'm not yet a full-on anarchist, every day I draw closer. It's so refreshing to hear someone deliver the news with the ideals of freedom driving the commentary. Lava Flow is the best source for news without any right or left bias. I commend you, sir, and I look forward to every new edition. Gak, thank you so much for that review. Keep listening to this show, and I promise you will be a full-on anarchist before you know it. I've already converted several minarchists to anarchists just from this show alone. As a matter of fact, I received an email just this past week from a listener named Scott who said, quote, "I've been listening for a couple of months and just wanted to let you know that you really helped me over the hump of minarchism. I now have a consistent political philosophy, and I was exposed to this line of thinking because of your podcast. Thanks, buddy, and keep striking the root." And my fourth review this week is from Fly Chicken, the place for libertarian news. I listen to 20-something libertarian podcasts. So do I. Join the club. And as much as I love the Tom Woods and Jason Stapleton shows and the like, this is the place I go to hear what is happening with libertarians by a libertarian. Nowhere else is so much information said so well and so succinctly. Holy shit. I mean, that's high praise, putting me up there with Tom Woods and Jason Stapleton yet again. I don't even know what to say to that. Thanks so much, Fly Chicken. I really appreciate it. And finally, from Elizabethan. Well-grounded, thoroughly researched. Sometimes life gets crazy and it's hard to keep up with the news. Fortunately, the lava flow does that for me. Sometimes I get caught up in new endeavors and rack my brain to reconcile my available choices with the lava-esque life I choose for myself. Fortunately, the lava flow offers well-researched recaps of important concepts, e.g. the NAP, the role of police in a voluntary society, protection of children in a voluntary society, that I can revisit anytime. Copious references allow me to revisit the primary sources at any time. Each fortnight, the lava flow informs and grounds me and keeps me wanting more. Again, I'm speechless here. I don't even know what to say. This is just an incredible review. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Yan, and you made me blush. You know, all of these reviews help me get the word out about this show. iTunes steers people to this podcast based on several factors, including the number of subscribers, the number of downloads, and the number of positive reviews. So every review that you give me helps this show. Please, if you get a minute, go to thelavaflow.com/iTunes today and give me a rating and a review. Thank you. And for the first time in a few weeks, I have a new donor. I am so excited. Lisa has pledged $5 per episode using Patreon. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks to you, I am now at a total of $82 per episode, over 80% of the way towards my first goal. I only need an additional $17 per episode to bring all of you more weekly content. Now, I gotta say, I'm pretty excited about launching the Lava Spurt Weekly, but I'm pretty nervous about it as well. This is going to add quite a bit to my podcasting every week, but you guys are making it worthwhile for me to do so, and it is so much appreciated. Again, thank you so much, Lisa. If you, like Lisa, want more of the Lava Flow and to keep this show ad-free, exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, using Federal Reserve notes through Patreon or Bitcoin through Coinbase. There are monthly costs associated with doing this show, and I need additional equipment to continue making this show better for you every single episode. Thank you to everyone who contributes to the show. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.